Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and if you're like me, you just finished cooking for Thanksgiving and now your mind is on to the next holiday. In the month of December, I want to give you a couple options of what to cook for the big holiday at the end of the month. With the holiday seasons, you always have these big format kind of pieces of meat like prime rib or beef Wellington, which are rather expensive to do. First video for the month, what I wanted to do is give you guys an option of something that is significantly cheaper, and in all honesty, I feel like it rivals them in flavor. In this video, we are going to be using a pork shoulder, but I really do feel like there's so many videos out there on YouTube using pork shoulders that are so boring. This idea sort of came up from personally one of my favorite spots that I think is highly underrated, Micklethwait in Austin. They do a sliced pork shoulder that a lot of people I feel like overlook, but personally for me, when it's done right, it's one of my favorite cuts of meat that I've eaten in barbecue restaurants. So today we're going to take that idea of that sliced pork shoulder, introduce a little bit more holiday flair by making it into a porchetta. So with that being said, let's take this piece of meat that people always overcook and make into something extremely delicious. Right here I have a bone and shoulder that's about 8 pounds. The first step is going to be to open up the shoulder as best as we can. Now, I know that Costco sells them boneless, but I think butchery is fun and you have more control of the end product. For this process, I'm using my 6-inch curved boning knife. You want a thin, semi-flexible knife to get around the bone. Find the flat side of the blade bone and use that flat side as a guide to open up the shoulder like a book. Use your hands and the knife to open it up as much as possible without going all the way through. Now that we have it opened up, we have better access to the bone. This part can be a little tricky, but try your best to pull the bone away with your hands and use just the tip of the knife to nick the meat while slowly peeling the bone away from the rest of the shoulder. The first time I tried it, it was pretty difficult, but after some practice, it becomes a soothing process, almost like trimming brisket. Next, we're going to butterfly the shoulder to create even more surface area. On each side, cut it horizontally again, being extra careful not to cut all the way through. Then to finish it off, make shallow cuts to create a diamond-like pattern to allow for more surface area for seasoning. The biggest problem with traditional pulled pork is that you only get seasoning on the outside, but by butterflying it and making these cuts, we'll have layers of seasoning throughout. Now that the pork shoulder is all prepped, let's make a delicious paste to give it all the flavor. The ingredients that you're going to be using are 4 to 5 cloves of garlic, sage, thyme, rosemary, lemon, orange, and fennel fronds. We'll be using the rest of the fennel later. First, we're going to start by zesting the lemon and orange, and in a food processor, pull the leaves off the herbs. The stems are a little bit too fibrous, so you want to avoid adding these in. Then we'll add the rest of the garlic, zest, and the juice of the lemon and orange. Give it a couple pulses, scrape down the sides, and make sure everything is nicely incorporated. Once everything is uniform, add a good drizzle of olive oil and let it run for a few seconds to let all the flavors mingle together. Now that we have the paste ready, I'm going to liberally season it with salt and pepper. I like to add salt separately to ensure it's seasoned evenly. Once seasoned, spread out the paste and make sure it gets in all the cuts that we made. Just look at how beautiful it is. With all the herbs, zest, and citrus, there's no way that it's not going to be great. To keep all the flavor in, we're going to tie this up. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I am not good at tying knots, but I found a really good video that helped me understand it better. I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. As you're making these knots, make sure they're evenly spaced out and that they are extra tight. We're going to be resting this in the fridge for a few days, which will shrink the meat just a little bit, but it'll also shrink as it cooks. So if you feel like it might be a little too loose, just cut off the knot and just redo it. When it's all tied up, drizzle with a little bit of olive oil as a binder and season again liberally with salt and pepper. I'm going to place this on a wired rack on top of a tray and let it sit in the fridge to dry brine for about 2 days to draw out excess moisture and season the shoulder thoroughly. After 2 days, the fat has a little bit of a yellowish hue and the meat has a rosier color. That's what happens when the excess water is pulled out of the fat and meat. Now we're going to grab a rotisserie attachment, make sure you're going through the center of the porchetta, and definitely make sure to clamp each side extra tight so it doesn't slip. Once it's all set up, it's time to take it outside. About 30 minutes before you bring out the porchetta, start your fire with Korean newspaper, Fogo fire starters, and today we're using the Fogo briquettes. Once the coals are ready, spread out the coals evenly on both sides of the grill. Place the attachment for the rotisserie and make sure the porchetta is not sitting above any coals. Once you got everything set and you turn on the switch, this is going to be cooking anywhere between 300 to 350 degrees. If you're interested in this rotisserie setup, use my affiliate link in the description to find it on the SNS website. While the porchetta is cooking, we're gonna make a fennel slaw and Italian salsa verde to top our porchetta. First, let's deal with the fennel. Cut off the stalks, set them aside for now, and split the bulb in half. Instead of making cuts across the fennel, I'm gonna turn the fennel so it's at a point and start cutting at the corner. You get more of a shaved fennel cut and a texture that's more like slaw mix, which I think will work better for the sandwich. Once you cut down one of the corners, turn the fennel again and shave down the other corner. With this kind of cutting, you'll have more uniform pieces of fennel. Next, we're gonna split the stalks in half so they look like celery, and try to cut them as thin as possible. They have good flavor, but they're a little bit fibrous. Think of like a thicker celery. Once you have the fennel bulb and the stalks all shaved up, put them in a mixing bowl and season it generously with salt. Give it a good toss and do this every 15 to 20 minutes. We wanna draw out extra moisture and get the fennel to be a little bit more tender. I let it sit for about 2 hours and this is what it looks like. It's not as stiff as it was before, and it's a little bit more translucent. As you can see, all the extra water is the bottom of the bowl. Drain and squeeze all the excess water, add in the juice of half an orange, taste for seasoning, and at the very end, add some fennel fronds to give it a different flavor. I like to add the fennel fronds at the end so it still stays vibrant and adds a fresh flavor. We're gonna set this aside for now, and let's make our salsa verde. We're gonna start by dicing a shallot or red onion. Try to get them nice and small because they're going to macerate in some vinegar to soften the shallot and to lessen the harshness of the raw flavor. I think most people use red wine vinegar. Here I'm using an aged sherry vinegar. You guys might have seen me use in past videos. After about 30 minutes, into a bowl, I'm gonna mix some chopped parsley, capers, garlic, some of the macerated shallots, and mix it with some olive oil. I like adding the olive oil in stages to check the consistency. I want it to be fully hydrated with oil, but I don't want it to be sunken in a pool of oil. At the end, I added a few more shallots just for flavor and for texture, and some of the vinegar the shallots were sitting in for some brightness. Last ingredient that's traditionally in Italian salsa verde is anchovies. I didn't have any on hand, so I added some fish sauce instead, and it was fantastic. To finish, I'm gonna add a nice squeeze of some lemon juice, and then make sure you add in some seasoning to taste at the very end. We'll let this sit with the fennel slaw as the porchetta finishes cooking. After about 2 hours of cooking, the porchetta has reached an internal temp about 180. I find that 180 works the best for this. At 160, it's fully cooked, but still a little bit too chewy. At 180, some of the intermuscular fat has started to render and the meat is way more tender. Even though it's done, I want to take it one step further. I want to make sure that we can even out the crust on the outside and render out any thick layers of fat. At this point, I'm going to move all the coals to the middle of the smoker and manually turn the shoulder to hit specific spots. And since it's dripping directly over the fire, you don't want to leave this spinning on its own. Don't walk away, because you can walk away and come back to a burnt crisp. Turn it as necessary to get that color and bark you're looking for. Once you've done that, bring it inside and let it rest for at least 30 to 45 minutes. I gotta say, this was a very proud moment. I wasn't sure how this was gonna turn out, but it's got great color all the way around, and the smell from the herbs and citrus was perfuming the kitchen. Now it's time to take off the butcher twine and get a good cross section. Ooh, God, that looks good. Yes. You can see how all the cuts we made allow for the herb and citrus paste to be spread throughout the shoulder. And the last blast of heat built a crust while rendering some of that fat underneath the surface. I had to get a bite of it on its own with a little bit of the fat on the outside. Oh my God. It was so much better than I expected, and I wanted to keep eating it, but let's make a sandwich before I sit here and eat the whole thing. We're gonna start with a bami baguette. I prefer this baguette because it's super light on the inside while having a crispy but not hard exterior. And just for fun, we'll rub it on the cutting board to collect all the extra juices. When laying the porchetta, mix in different parts to get all the flavors of pork in each bite. Then add a good portion of the Italian salsa verde. I also like to drain it with a spoon in the side of the bowl so the sandwich doesn't get too oily. Lastly, a generous topping of our fennel slaw. Guys, this sandwich was the bee's knees. You get all that wonderful flavor from that porchetta filling, the smokiness from the rotisserie, the char from the last blast of heat from putting it directly over the coals, a lot of the savory freshness from the salsa verde, and great crunch and brightness from the orange fennel slaw. I am not kidding you guys, this may be the best bite of food I've had on this channel. And in all honesty, I think I prefer the porchetta made out of the shoulder rather than the belly because it's not overly fatty. The amount of intermuscular fat that's in the shoulder was perfect and created the perfect ratio of fat and meat, which is why it's such a perfect cut to make sausage with. Alright guys, so that's it. That's my pork shoulder porchetta, and honestly, like I said, one of the best things I've made on this channel, if not the best. And this is something that you can do way ahead of time. Make this fennel way ahead of time. Make the salsa verde ahead of time. You know, you're gonna season the pork ahead of time anyway. If you don't wanna turn this into a sandwich, have it like a roast, cut it super thin, you know, shingle it on top of a plate, and add the salsa verde and the fennel slaw on top, and dude, it's gonna be a banger for sure. If you guys have a Weber Smoky Mountain or a ceramic smoker, just make sure you put a tray underneath it so all the fat doesn't drip on top of the fire. And to crisp it up, just remove the tray and roll it around on the open fire, and it should be great. For those of you guys who are gonna fire or offset anyway, you know, this is one thing that I think is perfect for it. You don't really have to baby it, you just have to check the internal temp to see when it's done. And then, you know, if you guys have a grill or something like that, again, just roll around there to crisp it up, and that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and again, this idea just kind of came from, you know, taking something that's a little bit cheaper and, you know, making something that makes it better than all the more expensive cuts, because it does get quite expensive for the holidays, especially if you guys are buying gifts and stuff like that too. You don't want to have to feel like you're breaking the bank just for one specific day. So if you guys are looking for something fun and more involved and interesting and different, definitely check this out. And in future videos, I'll be doing some more traditional stuff for those of you guys who are looking for that, but making small tweaks the way I like it. And so if you guys are looking forward to that, please make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel. And if you like this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and I'll see you guys in the next one.